So let's talk UKIP, because the leadership race has begun. There are 6 candidates on the list to replace Nigel Farage, but Stephen Woolf MEP, who was the bookies' favourite, isn't included as he failed to meet the eligibility criteria. Due to a late submission, 3 members of the Executive Committee have resigned in protest. MEPs Jonathan Arnott, Bill Etheridge and Diane James, Councillor Lisa Duffy and activists Philip Broughton and Elizabeth Jones have all been confirmed. We've invited them all onto the programme, including Stephen Woolf, to showcase their credentials. We've got 5 of them. We've got Jonathan Arnott, Bill Etheridge, Elizabeth Jones, Lisa Duffy and Philip Broughton. But before they convince us that they've got what it takes, let's get a little bit more reaction to Stephen Woolf's exclusion. Tom Bateman's our political correspondent. Afternoon to you, Tom.
Afternoon.
So tell us a little bit more about what's happened with Stephen Woolf.
Well, what happened at midday today was we had, in the form of an email, the shortlist of all the candidates that would be going forward in the leadership race to succeed Nigel Farage. Now, there'd been much focus on Stephen Woolf. He's an MEP, he's the party's immigration spokesman, and was perhaps the front runner in the race up until this point. But he had quite a colourful few days, because it emerged after the weekend that he had managed to get his nomination forms in late, 17 minutes late only, but late for the leadership. Now, he had blamed that on computer problems at the fault of the party, but it then emerged that he, when he'd been running for a previous election as a police and crime commissioner, had not declared a conviction for being drunk in charge of a scooter. Now, there was then the question, well, was he going to survive the process, that vetting process of the party's executive committee? And he has not. And they have said that because he got his nomination papers in late, he can't be in the running. But this has opened up a new schism in the party, because Mr. Woolf was very much seen as being by some perhaps a natural successor to Nigel Farage, a key ally of his. And what we've had now is an atmosphere of acrimony, hostility and backbiting among people in the party, because those who wanted him to be leader are outraged by this decision. We've already had, as you mentioned, 3 members of that executive committee resigning in protest. They've written a long letter citing escalating megalomania by others on the UKIP Executive Committee, and Mr. Woolf himself has said he is extremely disappointed by this. So where does it leave us? Well, as you say, you've got 6 candidates now, and I know you have 5 of them with you. The one who isn't there, actually, Diane James, probably going to be, I think, the front runner. She's probably the better known among the membership and MEP, but the party's deputy chair as well. But I think the point about this is the race starts in really difficult and quite hostile circumstances. We should get a winner announced by mid-September.
Tom, thanks very much indeed. Well, we'll get the ball rolling on our speed dating event in a moment, but we wanted to ask all of you first your reaction to Stephen Woolf's exclusion. Jonathan Arnott.
Well, the job of the eligibility panel was to determine whether or not the rules have been followed. They're the ones who have seen the evidence, and we're not. So they are the ones who can know whether the rules were followed or whether they aren't. And if they make a mistake, if they ban somebody who is eligible, or if they allow someone stand where they shouldn't, then they'd risk legal action being taken. And that's why any decision should always be evidence-based and not about personalities. I can't comment on that because I haven't seen that evidence. So I think it would be wrong for anyone, particularly a leadership candidate, to comment on whether that was right or wrong without having seen the evidence. What I can say is that I do believe that Stephen Woolf has a huge role to play in the party. He's a great media performer as we move forward.
Bill Etheridge, it's not part of you that would have liked him to have been in it, so if you do win, people won't say, well, if Stephen Woolf had been in, he would have beaten you.
I would have loved for Stephen to be involved in this race. Absolutely no doubt about it. I would have absolutely loved that. If you're going to win a race, you want to beat everyone involved. And, quite frankly, I was enjoying the concept of getting my teeth stuck in on some of the arguments about policy. But sadly, I'm not involved in the decision-making process, and we have to abide by the rules. Otherwise, there is no democracy, there is no process. So, we have to abide by rules and not particularly go too angry if the rules go against us. But I would have loved Stephen to be there. He's a friend and a colleague, and what's more, I'd have liked to have beaten him.
Liz Jones, right or wrong to exclude Stephen Woolf?
Well, as I'm a leadership candidate, I've had to recuse myself from this debate, really, and I don't wish to pass any comment or to say that I hope that this will now be an excellent campaign and may the best candidate win.
Philip Broughton, what would Stephen Woolf have brought to the race?
Well, from what I've seen, look, there are a number of issues that Stephen has. But, I mean, ultimately, this is a decision for the NEC. I think it is a shame. I mean, I think the more open the debate, the more candidates, the better it would be for this leadership contest. But I think what we've got to do is we've got to have a big, open, broad debate about the future direction of this party. And ultimately, one of us is going to win this leadership contest, and then all of us have got to get behind the new leader, support them, and we've got to start building a new team, a strong team that can take the fight to the real enemy, which is Labour and the Tories.
Final one on this, Lisa Duffy. How difficult was the website to use and get your application in? Because Stephen was saying it was very difficult.
No, it wasn't particularly difficult. It was a form that would probably took about 2 hours to fill in. But what you do in anything that you're doing when IT is involved, you worry about the computer saying no, so you give yourself time to actually get your forms in. Now, I can't comment on whether Stephen gave himself enough time or not. I wasn't with him. What I do know is the NEC have had an incredibly difficult job to do in making sure that the rules and the procedures have been followed, and they have had to adjudicate, and they've come up with a decision that Stephen isn't allowed on the ballot. And I think we have to respect that decision. I'm sorry not to see Stephen in the race. As Bill said, it would be good for us all to go against each other, and hopefully each of us wants ourselves to win. And now we need to look forward, have a positive leadership race between all six of us, and may the best man or lady win.
Well, Stephen Wolf's just released a statement. He says he's extremely disappointed by the NEC decision to exclude him from the leadership election. He says that the NEC, over the course of this process, has proven it's not fit for purpose and confirmed many members' fears that it's neither effective nor professional in the way it governs the party. However, he does wish all the other contenders well. We have 5 of them with us on Afternoon Edition, 85058. Get your questions into them. We're going to play Blind Date very shortly. Diane James is the only one who we couldn't get to play Blind Date with us today, but we will keep trying her. It was very, very short notice, so hopefully we will get her on the programme at a later date. So let's start with setting out your stalls, and we'll start right back at the beginning again with you, Jonathan Arnott. Why you in about 30 seconds?
We need to reach out to the 13.6 million people out there who voted to leave the European Union but who did not vote UKIP at the last general election. That means that we've got to reach out to the northern working class voters who have been completely ignored and abandoned by a Labour Party that no longer, if it ever did, represents them. I'm a candidate who will bring that modernisation and professionalism to the party, but also I'm someone who's able to bring unity back to the party. I spent 6 years as General Secretary of this party. Okay. I know how we can take a party that's divided and unite.
That's your 30 seconds. That was Jonathan Arnott, UKIP MEP for the North East. The next 30 seconds belong to Bill Etheridge, UKIP West Midlands MEP, UKIP Councillor Sedgley Ward, DMBC. Go.
Thank you. As you say, I'm a councillor and an MEP. I've seen politics at the domestic and the international level. I've got policies that I want to put forward. I want to reform the structure of the party. I don't want us to be any longer donkeys led by donkeys, being led by donkeys. Lions are the activists. And I actually want us to put forward a real chance for the British people to have a real voice against the establishment. And that's my pitch.
Elizabeth Jones, Deputy Chair of UKIP's Lambeth branch. You're next.
I'm going to continue Nigel Farage's outstanding legacy because I'm the only person here who is not a professional politician. I am mired in the reality of most people's lives, being a divorce solicitor of some 20 years standing in London. Also, my running mate, Lawrence Webb, he's the leader of Havering Council. Between us, we've contested 33 elections. We've garnered over 100,000 votes for the party. We walk the walk. We don't just talk the talk.
Let's get 30 seconds views from Philip Broughton, UKIP activist who stood in Hartlepool in the last general election. Take it away.
Well, I'm a young, passionate, northern working class guy. I've got the vision, the passion and the skills to be the next leader of UKIP. I've got real life experience as well as political experience. And what I think we have to do as a party is we have to broaden our message so we talk about all the issues, the NHS, the economy, law and order, foreign policy, defence. And we have to change our tone. We have to realise that the way we say things is just as important as the words we use.
Philip, thank you. And Lisa Duffy, finally, Town and District Councillor for Ramsey in Cambridgeshire. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a team builder. I'm grassroots. I understand winning first past the post elections, which I've done 4 times. I understand UKIP inside out. I've been part of it for 12 years, and I've worked at the heart of it as their party director and as their national coordinator for Young Independents. I was part of the assessment process and building that up for the party, and I ran their Westminster by-elections from Barnsley in 2011 through to Clacton and Rochester. I'm not afraid to tackle difficult decisions, and I really understand real people and real lives.
That's your 30 seconds, Lisa. That's your 30 seconds. We'll have to leave that one there. 85058 if you've got any specific questions you would like to put to the 5 candidates. We've given them these questions before, so don't think it's unfair that we're going to go back to Jonathan now to ask him the second question first, which is UKIP believes immigration is far too high and that it must be controlled. Give me one policy you would implement that would target immigration. Jonathan.
Well, we must never, ever, ever be anti-immigrant or anti-immigration, but always anti the uncontrolled mass net immigration that has driven down wages and is costing jobs, particularly in the north of England. There's good immigration and there's bad immigration. What we've got to do is get the benefits without the negative consequences, and that's why we need a points-based system to ensure that the people who come to this country bring in the skills that we need in order to make this country a better place. How
would the points-based system work in practice?
Well, you ensure that the people who want to come to the country have skills. So you ensure that points are allocated according to various criteria, whether people speak English, whether they have a criminal record or not, whether they have the qualifications that are needed, a degree and so on, whether they actually bring skills that are relevant to the sectors that we need people working in. You give points for all of those things, and if they have enough points, if they can prove that they're going to bring more into our economy than they take out, then of course they are somebody who's going to help this country, and you allow them to come into the country.
OK, Bill Etheridge, one policy that you would implement targeting immigration.
I think we're all going to be very, very similar on this one. I think basically we've got a settled line where we talk about a point system, and it's quite clear that immigration is a good thing, and immigrants are people who we need to enter the country, and none of us are going to have any issue with immigrants per se, but we've got to make sure that the right people come in to do the right jobs and in the right number so the infrastructure of the country doesn't creak.
How lovely that you're singing off the same hymn sheet. Elizabeth Jones, do you have a different policy for targeting immigration?
I have a different slant because of the professional world I work in. And the aim, of course, would be to achieve zero net migration, so the numbers migrating out balance those migrating in. And I think I would focus actually on sham marriage and perhaps consider reintroducing the primary purpose rule, whereby foreign overseas spouses or potential brides, husbands, would have to prove that the reason why they're coming to the country is solely for the marriage and not residency. And I think a very important issue that it seems to be consistently overlooked is immigration marriage fraud. And should this be made a criminal offence? I think it'd be a good idea if it were, because it causes so much heartache and unnecessary strain on our resources. So immigration marriage fraud, a criminal offence, bring back the primary purpose rule, and let's have zero net migration.
Philip Broughton, one policy you'd implement that would target immigration.
Yes, I mean, I think, look, this party can never be anti-immigration. What we want to have controlled immigration, and that's why we would bring in that Australian points-based system. It treats everyone the same, everyone fairly, everyone equally. It judges each individual on their own individual skills and talents, and we'd have a limit of between 30 and 50,000. I think that is a reasonable level of immigration. It's a manageable level of immigration, and it would be far better than the chaos we've had in our immigration system under both Labour governments and Conservatives, with net migration currently running at over 330,000.
And finally, the same question to you, Lisa Duffy.
Yeah, very similar lines to the other guys. I've been part of UKIP for 12 years. We want a fair immigration system. We want a point-style system. We want it skills-based. We want work permits, student visas, and we want to welcome people from across the world. But what we want to do is to control it, know who's here, know why they're here, and know when they're going.
Well, we've got a question in from one of our texters on 85058, which would be great if you could all answer this one. Would you put more resources into targeting Labour-held seats or Tory-held seats? Let's move things around a little bit. Elizabeth Jones.
I think the time has come for UKIP to take on Labour, and I think that resources should be diverted into the Labour heartlands, by all means. In fact, I think it would, if I became leader, one of the first things I would do would be to set up a Labour Heartlands Roadshow, and I would take the UKIP team all round the main Labour hotspots of the United Kingdom to introduce ourselves. I also want to introduce ourselves to the unions, have meetings with the unions, invite them over to us so we can have a sensible discussion about UKIP policies such as we discussed earlier, about migration, about resources in the country, how we're going to manage that, about fairness, equal opportunities for all, access to employment opportunities and education. We have to reach out to the unions. We have to reach out to the Labour Party members to see that there's an alternative, because Corbyn-style Labour, of course, is getting redder and redder and redder. And this is a huge turn-off to the old Labour traditional voters. We have the core British values which old Labour voters have always supported. And we're the only party now, it's our USP, our unique point, that we are the inheritors to old Labour.
Same question to Philip Broughton. This question of, would you put more resources into targeting Labour-held seats or Tory-held seats?
Well, I nearly won Hartlepool at the last general election. I got the fourth best result in the country. And let's be honest about it. The Labour Party is falling apart under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. The Conservative Party is deeply, deeply divided. And I think this is a golden opportunity for UKIP. We've got to go for Labour seats. We've got to go for Tory seats, maybe with more of an emphasis on Labour-held seats. But this is a real opportunity for us. And I think if UKIP, if we broaden our message, if we change our tone, then I think we can get millions of people who are currently thinking about voting UKIP to actually come over to us and actually vote for UKIP in the next general election.
Bill Etheridge, Labour or Tory seats?
Wherever we can win. I think it's absolute nonsense to suggest that we should just go after one particular party. Both of these parties have led...
They're not actually suggesting that you should go for one or the other, but if it came down to a question of more resources, which would you put more into? What do you think you have a better chance of winning?
Well, it depends on what part of the country. We've got to have an overall view on this. I actually have been campaigning and fighting in Labour heartlands for years. So, I'd love to see more resources in there, but there are other places, like Thurrock and other areas of the country, where we're fighting Conservatives equally. So let's not be blindfolded by this and be one-eyed. We're going to go after wherever we can win and get the resources out, do it professionally and do it properly for once, because frankly, the professional party has let down the activists so many times over the years in these kind of situations. It's time we actually got this right.
Lisa Duffy, what would your strategy be?
Yeah, my strategy is I will be putting an elections department into UKIP, one that doesn't just rock up at election time, but is working on a 5-year rolling plan. In terms of resources to Labour, I've been shouting for us to look at taking the Labour vote since 2011 when I started the Westminster by-elections in Barnsley. But clearly we have to plan the resources. We need to look at where we had our very close second places, and we need to target accordingly, whether that's Labour or Tory. But clearly, Tory votes are for the taking. But we need a proper strategy, and I won't be bounced into saying where we should put our resources, because we need to have a clear plan.
Jonathan, I mean, Labour or Tory is the question, but also, does winning former Labour voters' hearts and minds during the EU referendum necessarily translate into changing their minds in a general election?
No, it doesn't. That's what we've got to work out. We've got to reach out to those people. We've got to professionalise. And frankly, we can't continue to lurch from election to election without a plan. Actually, I do agree that people like Lisa will have a huge role in developing that elections team. But the bottom line, to answer the question, is that at the moment, Labour-held seats are more vulnerable than Conservative-held ones because of the absolute mess in the Labour Party that just isn't representing the working-class voters that it perhaps once purported to represent. And Elizabeth's right that we should be talking to the unions, and that, for example, is why I assisted with the setting up of the trade union movement in UKIP. So actually, all of the candidates here are saying good things on this. We need to now put that all together and build a team that involves all of those answers that we've heard so far. Another text has come in on 85058, no name on it. It simply says, how can UKIP convince me that they aren't right-wing racists? We've got a couple along those lines. Bill Etheridge. Well, we aren't right-wing or left-wing. We try to go down a pragmatic set of policies. And as for the racist slur, I'm afraid that's a result of the dirty politics that goes on nowadays. We need to lead
this party forward and just be truthful, be honest, be open, and let's not get involved in a silly game playing and the name calling of the other parties. We're not racist. We simply want what's best for the British people, and we want more freedom and more democracy.
Lisa Duffy.
I think the beauty of UKIP is we're not afraid to talk about challenging and contentious issues. It was UKIP that brought immigration to the forefront in our Eastleigh by-election in 2013 when we forced the other political parties to start talking about it. So actually, UKIP is common sense. As Bill said, we are honest, we are hard-working, and we show we can deliver results. Just look at Brexit. So UKIP is not far-right. UKIP is common sense, centre ground, and is there for the people.
Philip Broughton, rightly or wrongly, this is the perception that some people have. How would you stand up and defend your position and say we're not in any way racist and we're not far right?
Well, I would say that we totally reject racism in whatever form whatsoever. And what I would say on immigration is it's not about race, it's about numbers. It's about how many people can a country sustainably take every year. And I would argue that 330,000 every year is too many. It's got to be more like 30 or 50,000. But again, it goes back to broadening our message. I think we've got to talk about protecting the National Health Service, stopping the privatisation started by Blair, carried on by Cameron. We need tougher policies on law and order. We need controlled immigration. We need strong defence, smaller government, lower taxes. You know, we've got a broad message. And whoever wins this leadership contest, we've got to get behind that new leader and take the fight to the real enemy, which is Labour and the Conservatives, and show people that we are a real, credible political force that can actually change British politics for the better.
Elizabeth Jones, is this a sort of a slur, as Bill mentioned, that is going to taint the party forever?
I don't think it's going to taint the party forever because it's already rather old and boring. And what on earth do people mean by far right? The number of times I've been out leafleting, canvassing, holding street stalls, going out meeting the public, going to public meetings, and have had this thrown at me. And when you ask these people, well, excuse me, you're calling me a racist, you're calling me far right, what exactly does that mean? They can never, ever answer you. Now, I can say that UKIP was, I would say, the only party that was totally opposed to the military invasion of Iraq. We were totally opposed to the military invasion of Afghanistan. We were totally opposed to the airstrikes on Libya, and we continue to support a peaceful approach with foreign affairs. We do not believe in warfare. We do not believe in destroying people's homes and livelihoods. So on that platform, I really don't understand this call that we're always racist. Furthermore, with regard to migration, our migration policy is entirely colour blind. It's nationality blind, because you satisfy certain criteria, you enter the country. It's not like being EU membership, whereby anyone with a certain coloured passport can walk straight into the country, whereas other people cannot. So I'd very much like these people to, perhaps the caller would kindly define what they mean by far right.